Marketing Legos Thought Leader interview. My name is Harshit and I'm the Director of Business and I serve two brilliant marketing SaaS tools, RankWatch and Websignals. And my today's guest is highly experienced marketer, founder and head of search of agency Method and Matrix, Jessie Ringer. Jessie, a big welcome to you and a pleasure hosting you today.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Perfect. Jessie, please tell us about your journey, man. I mean, how were you like as a kid and how you got to where you are today?
Oh, we're going that far back. Okay. As a kid, marketing's always been something that's always interested me. I can remember choosing electives in high school and, marketing and business were always the ones I gravitated to. And then entrepreneurship was another extension of that. I still remember doing a grade 9 business book report on how to start a business. And so, it was always something that has been in the back of my mind. Outside of that, I did regular kid stuff, a lot of snowboarding. I grew up in Ottawa in a pretty cold city. So, you get used to winter sports. So hockey, snowboarding. Yeah. And then later on, skateboarding and things like that. And so, after high school finished, I moved west to Vancouver and Whistler, BC, where I ended up spending quite a few years, being a snowboard bum, filming snowboarding and doing everything I could and, to be on a snowboard. And so after a few years of that, I decided it was time to grow up a bit and moved to Vancouver and started got into marketing and SEO just by dumb luck. I was looking to become a copywriter and that was proving quite difficult. It was shortly after the big recession in 2008. And so a lot of companies weren't hiring as freely as they once were. And so a friend had approached me to help manage their website. It's like a local spa doing massage therapy and Botox and skincare treatments. And so, I kind of fell into doing SEO for them, writing content and optimizing their website. And it kind of grew from there.
Gotcha. And what made you start your own, I think you started with your self-branded agency and then moved to this one.
Yeah. So, I was a consultant for 6 years, doing SEO for a lot of different businesses in and around Vancouver, but also working with other agencies. And I had a very timely conversation with a good friend of mine. And he also was working in the SEO space and kind of mentioned off the cuff, if you were an agency, we could send you some business. And it had always been something that had been in the back of my mind, but always very quickly talked myself out of it. And just that conversation kind of catapulted me into being like, maybe I should do this. And so, a few months later, I rebranded the agency to Method and Metric. And, 5 years later, here we are.
What's the best part of agency life altogether? What's the one thing that you enjoy most?
The most, I would say it's the people. I get to work with a lot of great people in terms of my team, but also we work with a lot of interesting clients. We don't take on any competitors in the same space. So we don't really have a specific niche or industry that we cater to. And so that brings us a lot of interesting folks. And I find that so fascinating and largely inspiring because people have made businesses out of the most random things at times, or random to me at least. But there are countless ways to build a business and build something that you're proud of. And that always really inspires me and fascinates me. And so, I think that's a big part of why I love doing what we do.
Brilliant, man. Let's talk about Method and Matrix. What all good offerings do you have? What all verticals do you serve?
Yeah. So obviously, first and foremost, we're an SEO agency. And so we focus on making sure websites can rank well on Google, which ties in with analytics performance. We're a very data-driven agency. So we focus a lot on making sure that, we're held accountable with analytics and performance. And then we also tie in conversion rate optimization. So we feel that, SEO and CRO are very much tied together, because you can rank number one for any number of keywords, but if they don't bring any traffic and they don't help increase revenue, then those keywords don't really help you in any real way. So we think about the whole kind of buyer's journey or website visitor journey in that, we want to rank the website highly in the search results, but make sure that it's the right terms, so that we're reaching the right people that are more than likely to convert on our website. So whether that is leads or e-commerce purchases or even downloads, like those are the things that we're thinking about. So the whole journey of, optimizing the website and then finishing off with conversion optimization and kind of building a solid website that people want to trust and, work with or buy from.
Gotcha. And just any specific industry that you prioritize working with, or is it like, open for all?
Yeah. So I would say that our main focuses are on SaaS companies as well as e-commerce companies. We find that those two niches, industries really have a lot of potential, and we're able to really help them in a way that's quite tangible. We do also work with a lot of small, medium-sized businesses, a lot of some startups, but also service-based industries. And so it's kind of all over the place. I mean, as I said, we've worked with some really interesting brands. We've done dating sites, we've done late in life pet care, cremation services, but we've also done printer equipment and community centers and different types of lawyers and law firms. So it runs the gamut. But I would say, software is a big one for us.
Gotcha. And let's talk about your client processes that you have in place. How exactly the onboarding happens, and what the first 30 days looks like for your client. How do you communicate? What channels do you use? What processes do you have in place, please?
Man, I think onboarding is probably the most essential part of our the whole project. So we always start with a kickoff meeting so that everyone can meet, our clients can meet the team so they know who's doing the work, so that we can ask questions and get a good sense of what that brand is about, what their expectations are from us, because communication and expectations are different for every client. Some clients love to be available only by email or only by phone or just on Slack. So we try and figure out what those look like, make sure that we're able to kind of define the timeline, hold us accountable, make sure that we know when the deliverables are coming. If they are making any changes to their website or have any marketing campaigns coming as well, that's another thing that we'd like to uncover. In terms of communication, we include all of our clients in a Slack channel as well as Google Drive, and we use Asana for our task management. Those are kind of the main areas that we like to communicate. Obviously, email is still the easiest way, but Slack at least gives everyone insight into the communications and what's going on with everyone else. Because not everyone on our team is involved in every aspect of the project. That wouldn't be sustainable. And so we want to make sure that everyone is abreast of what's going on. And their team, generally, we have 2 or 3 contacts at a company, within a marketing team. So we like to include them as well so that they can quickly answer any questions that we might have as well.
Gotcha. And Jessie, do you have a pre-made packages for your customers, or is it more or less done for you, tailor-made services for your clients?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, every company has different needs and goals for their business. And so it will kind of, get fit around those. But largely we offer generally, our projects start with a full audit and competitor analysis, as well as keyword research, and then content optimization, technical SEO implementation. And then we offer analytics setup. So that'll involve Google Tag Manager, Google Analytics, and Google Search Console, making sure that they're all working together, that we're tracking everything that we need within that platform, and obviously what the client needs too. And so then from there, we'll develop an A/B testing strategy to help improve conversions. Then we'll finish it off with content strategy, as well as a backlink audit and acquisition plan. So that's generally the standard package. But again, not every client needs all of that all the time. And so we yeah, kind of have to iterate around what they need as well.
So it's mainly like done for you service, tailor-made services, and you basically post your auditing, you come up with pricing and all of those stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Every service is a little bit different. Obviously, like capacity, the size of the website, how urgent their needs are, those kinds of things all play in.
Gotcha. And just like because there are so many engines running, like even if you are just offering one service, say SEO, right? You would need content writers, you would need developers to implement those or resolve those technical errors altogether, right? So do you have every person in house working on so many things, or do you still like as an agency point of view still kind of like have people on contract or outsource that work? How exactly do you operate?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, there's always going to be tension within the agency model. Cash flow is certainly a big part of this.
And
And
you're lucky
so,
you're into SEO service. You have long-term, recurring clients. So yeah.
yeah, and then so exactly. And so we like, it's really easy for SEO companies to kind of hide the work that they're doing. I would say that our industry is not inherently transparent. And so we try to do everything in our power to make sure that we're as transparent as possible. So we do keep writers, especially on our team, so that we can do that everyone has like a firsthand touch with the client. We also have a UX slash kind of user experience and kind of design expert on our team, and then a technical SEO lead. So we try to make sure that the work that we're doing is catered to their skill set, but also making sure that we minimize any outsourcing. Any contractors that we have work in-house as well. And that just ensures quality control, transparency, and the ability for our clients to get in touch with whoever's working on their website at any given moment.
And Jesse, what's the current churn rate of the agency? And do you have any specific retention programs that you focus on to kind of like work on that specific area?
Yeah, I mean, retention is kind of essential for us. Like SEO is not a one and done kind of experience. So we tend to work with our clients in 3 or 6 month stretches, and that gives them the flexibility to adapt and scale, but also it gives us the opportunity to establish a good reporting process, but holds us accountable to all the work that we're doing. You know, if we're doing just one-off projects and then going, hey, here you go, and see you later, it'd be really easy for us to just create a simple template, a cookie cutter process that doesn't really work for everybody. And so most of our clients are on like a longer term retainer, and gives us the opportunity to kind of build that relationship, create the trust that I think is essential in these kinds of relationships, but also like it gets clients results. And because we're working with them, weekly and daily basis, like they see results, not necessarily faster, but definitely in a way that's like quite noticeable.
Gotcha. And so percentage wise, what's retention rate that we're looking at?
Oh, our retention rate, we have some clients that we've been working with for like a decade. And we also have ones that have been with us for like 3 to 5 years. So, those are, relatively common, I would say. Yeah, most of the clients that we have, I'd say half are over 3 years in terms of like retention rate. And then the other half are relatively like within the 3 to 6 month range right now. But in terms of retention, I would say it's probably about like 70 to 80% for our clients that stay on beyond the initial contract.
Let's talk about some of the common mistakes that you identify when it comes to SEO during your initial audit. How to avoid them?
Yeah, I love this question. If the first one that stands out to me, and it's partly because it's been kind of coming up a lot more frequently in the last little bit, is companies that have a lot of services or a lot of product offerings, but only have one page for them.
Oh.
So like having an SEO agency that does content and workshops and conversion rate optimization and technical SEO, having all of that on a single service page. And this is probably going to get a lot of backlash from the designers listening to this, but it's really ineffective for SEO, but also really ineffective for your visitors to get the information they need to make a smart decision. And so that's one of the biggest challenges for sure, is trying to get companies on board with having one landing page per service offering. And so that's probably easily the biggest one right now.
Do these businesses even manage to rank, focusing onto multiple services, broad categories all on one page? Do they even rank?
Maybe for a couple of keywords. Oftentimes they are branded, but it would be very hard for you to rank for several keywords in that service space without the necessary focus for each landing page.
And as a personal preference, which website platform do you prefer when it comes to the SEO optimization, specifically like technical SEO, because that's the toughest thing to implement, right? And your on-page factors. Which platform do you prefer?
I mean, for e-commerce, I really like WooCommerce and WordPress. Like my WordPress, the fact that it's open source gives us so much flexibility. I do think Shopify is pretty solid and they're getting better. And so those two are definitely up there. One that I kind of struggle with is Webflow right now.
Yeah.
They're beautiful websites, but because you're customizing the backend, most designers overlook the necessary functionality that you need for good SEO. And that's one that is certainly like challenging because the designs come out like the sites look so good. Right. But they're just not functional enough. And so there's things like that kind of come into play. But WordPress, I would say, is by far my favorite because we can customize any of it. We can get into the code, we can make the edits that we need to make, but also like the themes look great. And the other part too is that most people have worked with WordPress. And so you're not tied to a developer or one person or team to make changes to your website. And I think that that's hugely essential in any business, regardless if they work with us or not. WordPress is pretty accessible for most people.
Gotcha. And since you mentioned Shopify, I also saw your course on Shopify around analytics. Yeah,
that wasn't a plug because of my course, but yeah.
No, I get that. But any limitations that you see on Shopify when it comes to implementing technical SEO, and any areas that you feel that should have been like better there?
Yeah, I mean, Shopify is inherently, because it is like a contained platform, it is harder to navigate, right? And so, especially when it comes to customizing code, but they are getting a lot more open with it. I would say like one drawback about Shopify is that, you have to pay for every app, right? And so if you want good SEO, you got to pay for an app. If you want good, I don't know, imagery and flow on your website, you got to pay for it. But that being said, like you can get into the back end on like a higher Shopify like cost account, and you can definitely get more customization involved. And that part is pretty good. But I would say, like if you're just getting started with a website, like Shopify is amazing. And as you scale your business and grow it, it does grow with you pretty well.
Let's talk about your technical audit process and any common challenges that you basically face when it comes to implementation. How many parameters do you typically work around? That's one of the key metrics a lot of agencies, kind of like SEO agencies, basically kind of focus on to. So yeah, please.
Totally. I mean, I'd say the biggest challenge with technical SEO is getting the necessary access, especially as an agency, because, we do need to do a really effective audit. We do need access to the log files, and we do need access to the backend and the server. And so those things can be pretty challenging to get. But I would say there are a lot of third-party tools that are getting a lot better at helping you analyze this kind of information and the data there. And so our process involves page speed analysis first and foremost. Although there are some parties that think it's not necessarily technical, a lot of it does come down to the specifics of that website. So your source code, the JavaScript, the CSS, those are some areas that we look at. Other, like for multilingual things, we have to look at the href lang and make sure those are set up properly. But for more like less international websites, we'll say. Like canonical tags are a huge part of that too. So we're looking at a lot of areas around how is the website communicating to Google? Is Google able to access that information? And is Google understanding that information properly? Those are three areas that kind of guide our audits, especially on the technical front. So looking at canonical tags, looking at hreflang, looking at the index coverage as well. Is Google finding a lot of erroneous links or a lot of content that is probably duplicate? Are we inadvertently sending Google to crawl a bunch of pages that don't need to be crawled? So we're looking at things like that. And then also, tying that all back into like the mobile experience and page speed and making sure that we're able to kind of consolidate as much of that load time as possible so that the pages load quickly and efficiently, and that we can also like make sure that the content that Google needs to see in order to rank these pages is visible as soon as possible. So that's kind of like our main process. And we also look at like redirect chains and broken links and server errors and all of that stuff to make sure that like the response codes are all dialed in and making sure that we're not losing little milliseconds here and there. And so trying to maximize all of that.
Gotcha. And any SEO automations that you basically use to scale up the operation? Because you're working with like almost like you do cater to big websites as well.
Yeah.
And there it plays a very crucial role.
Yeah. I mean, automation is a big part of our business. And so it just makes our jobs a lot easier, right? Like, so the things that we do, that we do automate are the like weekly and monthly crawls and audits. So we use Screaming Frog and we tie that in with a bunch of like with Google Analytics, Google Search Console, Ahrefs, and page speed insights, bring in those APIs into Screaming Frog and then run a weekly crawl on that. So that's probably where we spend the most time, is analyzing those elements. And this helps us identify if there have been any big changes in terms of traffic, keyword rankings, but also are there new sections of the website that got discovered by Google, or our pages like the opposite? Did we lose a bunch of pages and things like that? So we're able to then monitor uptime and downtime from those sites, response codes and response times as well. So that's a big one. Obviously, keyword rankings, we automate a lot of that and make sure that we have reports coming in on a weekly basis to analyze like what's going up, what's going down. And so those are obviously pretty vital. And then we set up a lot of alerts within keyword tracking software, Stat, Moz, I guess, and then also Google Analytics. And so any big changes on a week-to-week basis, we get an alert for that. And then also, on a daily basis, if our traffic has had a huge spike or a huge decline, then we have those to notify us as soon as possible.
That's brilliant. Are you automating your client reporting as well?
Not much. So for some of our like smaller clients where they just want to know, is business good? And we automate some of those reports. But for generally our, the clients that are medium and up, we customize all of the reporting. So we use Data Studio to kind of aggregate all the data. And then we put that into a report, review that, and send that over. So each of those is custom tailored to the client. I mean, all of our reports are custom tailored to the client regardless, but these ones I would say are a lot more robust and insightful, I would say, than like the basic, like, yes, traffic is good. Yes, revenue is up.
Let's talk off-page, man. I would love to know your link building process and which KPIs do you keep track of, and even about your audit, the off-page audit that you do for your clients.
Yeah, I mean, backlinking, it's a tough one. I would say it's like our toughest challenge for sure, because, we don't really have a lot of control over, whether or not they're putting the links on the site or not. So our general audit, we'll start with like analyzing what that backlink profile looks like. We use we use Google Search Console as well as Ahrefs to compile all the data there. And then we go through those and kind of manually check to see if these links are actually valuable, if they're legit, and that kind of stuff. Then we look at other competitors. We look for the gaps in terms of like who is linking to our competitors consistently and not ranking to us. We also do unlinked brand mentions, broken link cleanup, as well as like guest posting and kind of outreach in that space. So with all that in mind, I mean, for us to be successful with backlink acquisition, we tend to need to be a little more entrenched with the company that we're working with. And that usually comes down to having an email address with their domain on it so that we can reach out to them. And it doesn't feel like it's a spam attack when we do it. We take a lot of care in personalizing every email and making it as easy as possible for the recipient to implement that email or that link change. So, finding the page that it's on, finding the exact anchor text and asking them to replace it with the necessary link. And by having a company email address on that goes through, our response rates are a lot higher for it. Granted, people see these as spammy. And so it often is like a 2 to 3 follow-up process. And sometimes they're just like, oh, thanks for flagging that link. We'll just take it down. And so there's like a lot of games like that. So it tends to be one where we are, really entrenched with the client, making sure that we're able to, not have it as our sole measure of success. Because again, like one link is not going to necessarily move the ticker on all the rankings, but over time they do. So in terms of KPIs, we look at, one, are we getting those links? 2, this is obviously part of a longer gameplay, but is the domain rating going up? This is one metric that obviously has a lot of issues. I'd say it's pretty flawed, but clients like to see it. And it's something that we can kind of help to measure against. And then ultimately, are we getting more links, like more domains, more backlinks, and just keep working on that? Because I think it's quite challenging to tie new backlinks to keyword rankings or traffic. And then ultimately, I mean, this is also a 3rd tier goal, but what are the referrals like from those places? I know we know that not everybody clicks those links when they're there, but Google still uses them despite the fact that nobody clicks on these links. But we do like to be able to tie some of that traffic back to the links that we're getting.
Gotcha. And while finalizing a prospect site for your outreach altogether, what are the main parameters that you look after before reaching out to those media site or?
Yeah, I think an important characteristic that we look for is, are they doing marketing? Are they actively promoting their business in ways that we think we can help? So are they doing content? Are they doing potentially podcasts, videos? Do they have active social media channels? That's certainly part of it. We look to see if they have a team in place, and that comes into like LinkedIn or even on their website, because those partnerships, like those tend to be pretty helpful, because then they have a good understanding of the nature of SEO and like what it takes, and like has hopefully a real strong drive to make this succeed. And so those are some areas that we look at. Some kind of red flags on the opposite end of it are things like a small website or one that has like a lot of technical issues, because that kind of communicates to us that they don't have someone taking care of the website. This is like a little one, but we look at what tags do they have on their site. Like if they just have Google Analytics, they're probably not investing time or energy in other marketing efforts. And so that's something that we kind of look for. But also, are they growing? That's really helpful for us. How established are they? Yeah, those kinds of things for sure.
Gotcha. And for your guest posting process, do you loop in your client as well, like specifically with respect to the content as well? You take approvals and everything goes through them, approved, then goes out to that particular blogger.
Yeah, great question. Definitely, like all of our clients need to be looped in on this. And that this will come down to like their personal preference. Like a lot of clients that we'll work with, we'll give them the topic, we'll give them kind of the framework, and they'll write the content themselves, and then we'll distribute it. Again, like this comes down to transparency, and this has always been part of our thing. It's like, we want to make sure that they know that we're not just putting their website on, I don't know, blog loops and shady websites and just kind of like spamming things. We want to make sure that they are aware, like we give them a list of every website that we're going to be sending these out to, making sure that we do our due diligence to make sure that those websites are in fact reputable and reliable and are relevant to our clients. So yeah, we give them a lot of transparency on that front, and they are often involved in the content production and also the final sign off of who we reach out to. Because at the end of the day, I mean, we're just agents of that company. And so this is their brand, this is their reputation, and, we're just there to help. And if we end up kind of putting them in an awkward spot down the road over a short-term win, that's going to look poorly on us, but also like damage their reputation too. So it's something that we think about. We have the saying of, leave a campsite better than when you found it. And we kind of apply that to our clients too. Like leave a website better than we found it. And that's how we always try to approach our work. So, eventually they're going to move on, or we move on, or what have you. And we'll make sure that whatever happens there, they don't lose any momentum from the work we've done if they change partners or bring it in-house or what have you.
Gotcha. And Jessie, are you doing digital PR as well? Because I've seen like a lot of money making specifically, keywords, a lot of PR site, comparison site, aggregator sites do rank well, take up the topmost spot. Is it something that you're offering?
Yeah, I mean, PR is definitely relevant to SEO, especially in the digital space, right? Like, man, the conversations, podcasts, videos, like this is PR, right? So, but it does require a special skill set. So although we do some PR related work, I would say that we don't do it as a core service. PR people are, very different breed, and it's more relationship oriented than I would say SEO is. And so although I do think that they are closely aligned, we don't really offer it as a service. But definitely it's worth it. Like it's, and again, like if you're looking at press release services or other like mediums like that, if you're not focused on the backlink part, those things offer a lot of value, right? Google's gotten pretty good at downgrading press release backlinks. And so it doesn't necessarily hurt the backlink profile, but it definitely doesn't enhance the backlink profile the way it used to. So PR should be focused on actual like offline kind of thing, like rather than just trying to improve the SEO.
Gotcha. And since the world is moving into an omni-channel approach, marketing approach altogether, and you've been an analytics expert, and what I've seen in my experience is that attribution is always a pain point, when you're working with multiple channels. Any tips around that?
Oh, that's tough because I mean, we're performance marketers, right? Like doing ads, doing social, doing SEO. It's all about dollars in and dollars out. And it's all about being able to tie your work and effort to these marketing initiatives, right? And so attribution is really tricky. I would say one aspect to consider is getting away from last touch attribution. It's largely unfair, especially in the omni-channel experience, but also the fact that the way humans, real people, like engage with brands and interact is not linear, right? Like I could be looking at a website on my phone and then send it and then log in on my computer and take action. Like I prefer to do my e-commerce transactions at my computer. It's a lot more efficient for me, but a lot of other people enjoy doing it on their phone. But I definitely like see how there's both sides of it, right? And it's really hard for present analytics tracking systems to really get a fair understanding of mobile versus desktop. But then also like if you texted me an awesome product and I bought it, that attribution just goes to a direct visit because we don't know how that text message transpired, right? And so it's very hard to like really fully engage in like really understand or trusting that attribution within our analytics platforms. So I say, kind of take it with a grain of salt, like look at the multi-touch elements, understand that somebody may have seen an Instagram post or your video on YouTube, and then, went to their computer and typed in your domain name and bought something from you. And who gets the credit for that? And that's often going to be, like Google Analytics is going to be a direct visit versus that amazing content you created. So it's hard, and it's hard not to get hung up on it. But at the same time, I would look at how all of your channels kind of fit into the journey before the purchase happens. Like, what content do people read a lot? What content, what pages do people look at? What social channels are growing? Those kinds of things will add to it, which is tough because a lot of our goals and KPIs are all tied to revenue and leads and interactions on the website. It helps that Google is often the biggest traffic source, so it makes our job a little bit easier. But again, if you're in social or paid, it's tricky for sure.
That's true. Let's talk about a few of the CRO hacks for e-commerce website that you can share a few tips around it that will eventually help them boost their sales.
Yeah, e-commerce is like it's so challenging, right? There's so many moving parts in there. Let's start with the products. So depending on how unique your products are, you may want to consider, like, if you're selling clothes or a product that is pretty ubiquitous, like, I don't know, microphones as an example, or webcams, like, you're going to want to get really technical with the material or like the descriptions of it. And that's because, like, people are going to be searching for podcast microphones or webcams that are good outside. I don't know, like those kinds of things. So get really specific with that language. If you have, and I'm thinking very specifically around an online hobby shop that we work with, that is like, they sell tons of Pokemon stuff, Yu-Gi-Oh, Magic the Gathering type stuff. Those releases are extremely specific. And so your product names are inherently specific, and the search terms that people are using are also very specific. And so there's less worry necessarily about ranking for those keywords, because your new release is only going to be for this. That product page is only going to be for this. And it doesn't really cater to the broader sense of the term. So if you have a lot of specific products, I would say just make sure those descriptions are complete. Be mindful of the URL that you're using and that your meta tags are dialed. A really easy overlooked thing to fix is your image alt text and your image file names. I know that when you're uploading hundreds of images, you don't want to create a good file name for each one, but do it. It's hugely helpful. And same with the alt text. It's great for accessibility. And also just be mindful of how big those images are. They don't need to be 500 megabytes for a little screenshot of a box, right? And so be very mindful of that. On the collection front, I would say make sure that you have a description of that collection. And I see it a lot where they put it at the bottom of the page. That's one way to do it. I haven't seen any evidence to make it seem like that's a bad place for it. But if you're just doing it to rank for keywords, like, it's not going to really help you. We put ours at the top of the page, make it really clear as to what that category is about, and cover some information there. Cover elements of, like, do you do pre-orders? Do you do shipping across Canada for these products, or shipping across the United States or around the world? Those kinds of things. Like, give some relevant information about that collection or category. I say collection because that's what Shopify uses, but make sure that you have links in there that are kind of relevant to it. If you have partnerships, or this collection goes really well with another one, you can link to those and help create that relationship better. But ultimately, across the whole website, internal linking is huge.
That's one of the most overlooked strategy, a common mistake as well.
Yeah, well, if I told you that, then everyone would do what we're doing. But I would say, like, internal linking is pretty important. And that's not just like main navigation and footer navigation. I would say, like, links within content. If we're talking e-commerce, like, all those links on the collection pages are really important, but being mindful of, like, how many you have on there. Like, too many and you start diluting the value. Not enough, Google doesn't understand the context. Looking at those kinds of things, look at where you're sending users away from your website, because those are also things that we kind of overlook, in that you might be pushing people to go visit your social media account or watch a video on YouTube, and they go there and then they are gone. And so we want to be really mindful of that. Another one too, I think that does not get enough attention is accessibility. So thinking about super navigation menus where big and beautiful, but if you're a user that has to tab with a keyboard or uses a screen reader, they got to listen to all of that. And so being really considerate of the fact that, not everybody will access your website in the way that you've intended, and considering those other elements, watching videos where you don't have the sound on, right? Like if you're on a bus or at a library, you can't necessarily watch that video with sound or watch it in a way that is like well optimized. And so being mindful of those elements too. So making accessibility part of your process it helps with SEO because a lot of those factors are things that Google considers, but it also just makes your website way more accessible to a variety of your visitors. And so that also shows that you're thinking about them and prioritizing their experience versus your own experience.
That's wise. Jesse, since you have been in business for, you do have like 11 plus years of experience. I'd love to know a really successful case study that you've had and few metrics to back that success.
Yeah, don't want to overstate it, but we've had a lot of successful projects over the years. And that probably is why we're still doing what we're doing. So one that really comes to mind is a mental health practitioner. She's a counselor that specializes in epilepsy, PTSD, and women's health. And she was brand new in the space, opening an office in the middle of the pandemic. And we really focused on her blog content, making sure that the website was well optimized from a lead generation perspective. So making it really easy for people to contact her and book initial consultations and things like that. But then we tied that in with content. And within 6 months of blogging 4 times a month, we increased her traffic by 1,000%, essentially adding 10 times as many visitors to her website as she started with. And it's been exponential from there. So that's one that really, really stands out to me because again, it was one where it started from nothing and it was just her. And now she has a team of 5 working for her. And the content just continuously perpetuates more traffic and links and new business for her. So that's one that really stands out because also small business owner, it's hard work, right? And so that one was super fulfilling on the other side of it too. But yeah, we've had a lot where we've just grown their teams with SEO because for a large part, we've been just their marketing department. They rely on us to do a lot of that work. But yeah, we've on smaller fronts, and these are more SEO oriented things, is getting clients ranking number 1 or owning featured snippets for content that we've created. That is always one that our team gets super pumped about because it's one of those things that it's it doesn't necessarily change the business for them, but it shows that we were able to solve the problem of getting a content piece to take that spot. So we've had a lot of those kinds of wins.
Visibility, if you're ranking on some features altogether, and that's a good way. It's a very good strategy, to be honest. Blue links are definitely reducing, right? A lot of new sub features introduced every now and then. Yeah, how are you gonna basically get that level of exposure to your clients? You're bound to target those, yeah.
Yeah, it does help because then they see their name at the top of that search result, and it's really nice. And for better or for worse, everyone loves to Google their name. Unfortunately, I'll admit that I do it too. And it's really nice when you see your name at the top of the list and you see your website there. And so that's certainly that's one way that clients can hold us to account too, is hey, we don't rank number 1 for this term. Why don't we rank there? And so there's conversations like that, but it's helpful for sure. But again, I don't think ranking number 1 is the same winnable strategy as it once was. It's obviously a goal and it's obviously a thing that we have to measure our success against, but there's so many other ways. Like you don't rank number one. Like my content doesn't rank number one everywhere around the world. It'll rank number one maybe in Vancouver for a handful of terms, but it won't rank well in New York or in India or like Australia. And so there's this thing that you have to be mindful of the fact that every search result is going to be different and you won't always rank number one. But the goal is to like be at or close to the number one as much as possible across as many markets as possible that are relevant. And then, going from there. So we definitely focus on traffic, but from an internal perspective and a thing that clients can kind of be like, oh yeah, you're doing the SEO thing, like get those featured snippets up there for sure.
Gotcha. I think, Jessie, we're coming to an end here, and I would like to have a quick rapid fire with you. Are you ready for that?
Sure. Yeah. I've been waiting for this.
If you could travel back in time, what period would you go to?
Oh man, I actually the 1960s I think would be super interesting. The 60s into the 70s, man, yeah, that time would be super fascinating to me to go and experience that.
Gotcha. What do you prefer, texting or talking?
Oh, texting. I think that's a millennial thing, but yeah, I just assume everyone's always busy, and so I'd like to text for sure. And there's receipts then as well.
Anything new professionally happening in your life?
Oh, I mean, I'm going to be giving a talk in Montreal at PSE Web in July. That's pretty new. We got some new interns starting pretty soon. Man, yeah, those are some more present ones, I'd say. Yeah, those are definitely two for sure.
Gotcha. Well, what's your last Google search?
Oh, it might have been looking up the spelling of a software platform.
Gotcha.
That's what, yeah.
If you could ask God one question, what would it be?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, like there's the obvious ones of like, what's the meaning of life? But I don't know if I'd want to know that question. Actually, I think one question I would like to know the answer to is, are we all really connected? Like, they say that we're all stardust and things like that, but like, are we all really interconnected in a way that we just don't realize yet?
Fascinating one. And who inspires you the most?
Oh, so many people. Yeah, I'm easily inspired. I don't know if that's helpful, but like, man, people that do things unconventionally, do things like that are a little viewed as weird or unusual from the standard way of doing things. I think about snowboarding and skateboarding as examples, or any like sport where they got there in a way that wasn't traditional. Underdogs as well. Like, but anyone that's like trying to bring goodness to the world, that also inspires me. Like positivity, I think, is a big part of that.
Thank you so much, Jessie, for all the time, all the wisdom, and all the tips that you've shared in the session today with me. Really appreciate it. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Harshit. It was a great time talking with you today.